Hey, thanks for joining me. Are you the kind of person who gives yourself more responsibility than you need to give, and that kind of crushes you? Well, check this out. I remember one time Jordan Peterson said that human beings are beasts of burden. In other words, we're made to carry a load. That's what donkeys are made for. Human beings like to carry load. What he means by that is we're made for responsibility. That's what gives our lives meaning. And finally, it's the path to happiness. But that can go sideways on us sometimes when we put more on us than we really should be putting on us, right? And I think sometimes people who are loving, people who are Christian and Catholic, just, the facade of love, hey, I'm so loving, I do a lot of things, can actually lead to sort of this crushing burden, which is not how we're really made to live. So here's a scripture which I found always so illuminating, precisely in this tension between, responsibility and freedom from burden. It's from the Gospel of Matthew. It's very short. It's when Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest." He's saying, come to me, I'm going to give you rest. So Jesus is a burden remover, right? He doesn't impose burdens on us. That's really helpful for us right off the bat, right? So this is the kind of God that Christ has revealed the Lord to be and who he is. But listen to what he says next now, because it's a paradox. Take my yoke upon you. A yoke, Y-O-K-E, right? This is something you put on a beast of burden. And Jesus is saying, hey, my little beasts of burden, my little oxen, come here, I'm going to give you rest. And the rest is going to come by taking my yoke. In other words, taking the burden of Christ. He says, and learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart, and you will find rest for yourselves. For my yoke is easy and my burden light. So the paradox is, it's getting rid of the burdens that we impose on ourselves and only taking the yoke which is Christ, which is, he says, easy and light. Well, what's the yoke of Christ? It's the Father's will. I think that's one way to get at it. It's all Christ wants to do is the Father's will. For us, the grace there is simplicity, right? I'm not trying to please you. I'm not trying to please you. I'm not trying to please my own ego. I'm shedding all of those burdens, and I'm pleasing you, Lord. All I want is to do God's will. And there's a simplicity in that. But here's the paradox. What's God's will? What's the simple will of God for my life? In every moment as I move through the day, it's to carry the burden of Christ, which is the Father's will, which will always manifest itself specifically in some act of carrying the cross, which is the great act of love. So taking on my shoulders the concrete demands of love. Maybe it's in marriage. Maybe it's in my life as a priest. Maybe it's serving someone who's kind of annoying and they've just come into my life. That's the simple burden of the cross. So, fellow beasts of burden, here's this beautiful invitation to simplicity, right? To shed all the yokes that I place on myself for whatever reason or others are placing on me, and to allow the one simple and sweet burden of doing God's will in my life, which is always to love in the concrete demands of my life. That's a beautiful place to be. And what it does is it's sweet because it's something which is so worth carrying. To carry the yoke of Christ is to participate in the salvation of the world. To have that burden on your shoulders is really worth any sacrifice. So let's ask God for that grace so that whatever burden the Lord places in our life today, we'll find it not just light, but sweet.